December 19, 1968. The long high mountains don't rise out of Vietnam so much as they erupt. Gray limestone teeth punching through a green ocean of jungle. In the first light, mist clings to the ridges like wet gauze, and the valleys below breathe warm fog with every slow gust. The air is heavy enough to drink, every leaf sweats, every rock seems to sweat with it. To soldiers who've lived in the lowlands, this is just bad terrain. To soldiers who've survived long enough to develop instincts, it's something else entirely. Hostile, deceptive, alive. It is here, on ground that looks like it was designed to swallow men whole, that Staff Sergeant Michael James Connolly, United States Army Special Forces, stands at the edge of an experience he will carry for the rest of his life, like a shard of bone embedded under the skin. And before we go any further, if you value military storytelling that treats war as more than dates and unit names, consider subscribing. These stories don't just explain what happened, they show what it does to people who have to make it happen. Connolly is not a young sergeant chasing legends. He is 31, already weathered in the particular way combat makes a man older than his years. A Green Beret with multiple tours, decorated for valor, and comfortable operating where maps stop being useful and rules start becoming suggestions. He has done cross-border missions whose paperwork will remain sealed long after the men involved are dead. He has watched friends disappear into firefights that were never officially acknowledged. He has killed at distances close enough to smell breath and cordite at the same time. Inside the American system of unconventional warfare, Connolly is considered reliable, elite, even. So when he is attached to an Australian patrol operating out of Nui Dat, he arrives with a quiet confidence. Whatever he's about to witness will still fit inside the boundaries of what he already understands. He is wrong. Connolly's presence with the Australians isn't an accident or an act of friendly exchange. Rumors have been moving through American special operations channels like a virus. Whispers traded over stale coffee in Nha Trang, half-jokes told in Saigon that stop being jokes when the teller realizes no one is laughing. Australian patrols, 5-man teams, operating deep in Phuoc Tuy province, and somehow, impossibly, achieving results that entire American battalions struggle to replicate. Enemy units that simply go quiet. Areas that fall silent without artillery, without airstrikes, without the usual American signature of noise and destruction. A section of jungle that feels emptied, as if someone reached into the dark and removed the enemy by hand. To most Americans, the stories sound like what always happens when elite units operate near each other. Exaggeration, myth-making, the old competitive disease of soldiers trying to sound tougher than the next man. Connolly at first shares that skepticism, then he meets them. The unit is Australian SAS, Special Air Service Regiment, allies, yes. But from the moment Connolly steps into their orbit, he notices how little they resemble the American image of special warfare. They move differently, they plan differently, and most unsettling of all, they think differently. There is no bravado, no loud instructions, no last-minute scramble where someone is always looking for a missing piece of gear. Their preparations unfold with quiet efficiency, almost like ritual. Weapons are checked without conversation, packs adjusted with hands, not voices. Men exchange glances that carry meaning without needing words. And when they speak of the enemy, they don't talk about numbers. They talk about movement, signs, patience, time. The mountains ahead are not described as objectives. They are described as hunting ground. Standing at the jungle's edge, Connolly feels it before he can name it. He is about to watch a form of warfare that exists outside the industrial logic of American power. This won't be about overwhelming force. It won't be about technology. It will be about control, fear, the slow erosion of certainty, until the enemy no longer believes he is ever truly safe. When the patrol steps into the vegetation and Nui Dat disappears behind them, Connolly crosses an invisible line. Not a border on any map, but a conceptual boundary between two philosophies of war. One he knows, one he has only heard whispered about. And what waits in the long high mountains will force him to confront a question no manual prepares a soldier to answer, not whether something works, but what it costs to become capable of doing it. By late 1968, the men of the Australian SAS operating in this sector are no longer the same force that first arrived in Vietnam 2 years earlier. They entered trained in the British SAS tradition, long-range reconnaissance, surveillance, intelligence collection. But the jungle of Phuoc Tuy province didn't reward reconnaissance alone. It demanded adaptation. Continuous exposure to dense terrain, elusive enemy movement, and prolonged isolation reshaped them into something narrower, sharper, more predatory. Their transformation didn't come from new equipment or heavier firepower. It came from learning how to hunt. American doctrine emphasizes helicopter mobility. Insert fast, move hard, make contact, call support, dominate with volume. Firepower is reflex, noise is expected. The Australians stripped warfare down to its raw components. Movement became slow, deliberate, silent. Engagement was never automatic. Firepower was a last resort, not a habit. Success was measured not only in casualties, but in whether the enemy ever knew you were there at all. A crucial influence in this evolution came from the Aboriginal trackers attached to certain Australian patrols. To Connolly, trained in advanced reconnaissance, sensor-based intelligence, the American faith in machines, these men are deeply unsettling. They read the jungle like a living record. A broken stem isn't a broken stem. It's a sentence. Disturbed soil isn't dirt. It's a timestamp, a displaced insect trail, a faint change in scent carried on humidity, a leaf turned the wrong way. These are all information. From signs days old, they can tell numbers, direction, speed, fatigue, alertness. It makes much of America's technological advantage feel irrelevant. The Australians structure everything around that truth. 5 men move single file, spaced with mathematical precision. Every step is placed as if sound itself is a tripwire. Metal buckles are removed. Anything that clinks is stripped, taped, silenced. Weapons are wrapped to eliminate reflection. Rations require no heat. Radios are treated like poison, used sparingly, often limited to a single coded burst per day. Everything unnecessary is discarded, not asceticism for its own sake, discipline applied with cold logic. What strikes Connolly most is the absence of urgency. They do not chase contact. They do not speak in minutes or hours. They speak in opportunity. A patrol might shadow an enemy unit for days without firing a shot, learning habits, routines, vulnerabilities. When action comes, it comes because conditions are perfect. Not because doctrine says it's time. Silence becomes a weapon. Uncertainty becomes corrosion. Men who believe they are unobserved relax. They grow careless. And carelessness in this kind of war is fatal. The realization takes shape in Connolly's mind like a shadow gaining definition. The Australians are not trying to dominate the battlefield. They are trying to own the enemy's mind. The jungle is not an obstacle to push through. It is a medium to disappear into. And inside that medium, the Australians move not like soldiers traveling through terrain, but like hunters moving through territory that already belongs to them. By the evening of December 19th, the patrol has been inside the jungle for days. They have covered more than 16 kilometers through some of the worst ground in the province without being detected. They move primarily at night. During daylight hours, they become stillness, motionless beneath natural concealment so complete that enemy patrols pass within meters without noticing them. No fires, no exposed skin, no unnecessary transmissions. The jungle swallows them. Late in the afternoon, the Aboriginal tracker moves ahead alone. When he returns, he brings information that an American units would require aerial recon and multiple confirmation sources. A semi-permanent enemy rest station lies ahead, a rotating Viet Cong hub used to resupply and recover, 40 to 50 personnel, a perimeter of sentries around the camp, a legitimate military target, well defended and far larger than anything a 5-man patrol should engage. Sergeant Darren Walsh listens without visible reaction. He doesn't ask for artillery, he doesn't call for air, he doesn't even seriously consider withdrawal. Instead, he begins planning something that doesn't resemble an attack at all. It resembles erasure. As darkness thickens, the Australians start moving. No hand signal to begin, no whispered command. They simply dissolve into the vegetation, separating into pairs and single operators like shadows splitting from a larger shadow. Connolly, positioned at a distant observation point, loses sight of them within seconds. There is no sound to track, no glint of metal, no disturbance. What follows unfolds over hours, not minutes. One sentry disappears, then another. No gunfire, no struggle, no alarm. The enemy's perimeter communication system is simple. Whistle signals exchanged every 15 minutes, an audible check that all positions remain occupied. Then in sections, the whistles stop. Not all at once. One gap, then another. The silence spreads outward like a stain. Inside the camp, confusion begins to build. Runners are sent to investigate. They do not return. The enemy commander, facing an inexplicable breakdown of security, makes what seems like a rational decision. He pulls remaining sentries inward, tightening the perimeter around the central camp. In doing so, he abandons the outer ring entirely. He does not realize that decision completes the Australian design. From his observation point, Connolly watches the darkness without seeing anything move. He hears nothing, and yet he understands, deep in his gut, that something systematic is happening just beyond his perception. Warfare, as he knows it, involves noise and chaos. What he's witnessing feels like the opposite. Violence executed with such restraint that it seems unreal. At one point, the tracker beside him whispers a single word. Not commentary, not pride, a statement of fact. Hunt. The jungle begins to lighten with the first hint of dawn. The mist lifts in layers. Shadows withdraw from the tree line. Inside the camp, enemy soldiers stir, unaware their security has already been erased. The commander exits his bunker shortly after first light and stops. Around what used to be the perimeter lies a circle of bodies, placed deliberately, each one facing inward toward the camp they failed to protect. Boots have been removed and set neatly beside each fallen sentry. Weapons lie at their feet, unloaded, rendered useless. On each chest rests a single playing card. It doesn't matter what the cards are. The message requires no translation. The reaction is immediate, catastrophic. Shouting erupts. Men rush toward the outer ring, weapons raised, trying to understand what happened while already knowing instinctively something has gone terribly wrong. Fear spreads faster than orders. Discipline fractures before a single shot is fired. That is when the Australians open fire. The first rounds come from inside the tightened perimeter, from positions established hours earlier while the enemy was busy pulling inward. The enemy commander drops almost instantly. His deputy follows seconds later. The radio operator, hands reaching for the handset, goes down before he can finish a call for help. In less than 15 seconds, leadership and communication cease to exist. What follows lasts 11 minutes. It is not a battle in any conventional sense. Fire is controlled, deliberate, precise. Targets are selected for effect, not volume. Some defenders fire blindly into the jungle, bullets ripping leaves and nothing else. Others flee. A few try to organize resistance, but without command or cohesion, their efforts collapse almost as soon as they begin. When the shooting stops, the camp is silent again. More than 40 enemy soldiers lie dead or incapacitated. The Australians have suffered no casualties. Fewer than 200 rounds have been fired. No artillery called, no aircraft summoned, no reinforcements requested. 5 men have dismantled a fortified position through preparation, patience, and psychological dominance rather than brute force. As Connolly approaches the camp, the weight of what he has witnessed settles over him like wet concrete. He has seen effective combat before. Overwhelming firepower, massive resources, coordinated assault. This is different. This is economy of violence taken to an extreme. The outcome isn't just tactical success, it's the total collapse of an enemy's will to fight. Standing among the aftermath, Connolly realizes something that feels almost obscene. What he saw cannot be replicated by doctrine alone. It requires something rarer and something deeply unsettling. The Australians didn't just defeat an enemy force. They demonstrated absolute control over the battlefield before the enemy ever knew a battle had begun. And then, when the firing ends, the operation does not. What happens next unsettles Connolly more than the engagement itself. The Australians do not celebrate, they do not speak loudly. They move through the camp with methodical calm, documenting what they've done and what they've learned. Maps are photographed and returned. Documents are recorded and replaced. Personal effects are handled carefully, then left exactly where they were found. Nothing is taken that does not serve a purpose beyond the moment. Connolly realizes this isn't indifference, it's intent. They want the next unit that enters this camp to know exactly what happened. They want the message to travel farther than any patrol can walk. Faces are photographed, identification papers noted, unit markings recorded, not for trophies, not for statistics, but for the slow extension of the operation into rumor, memory, and fear. They are shaping what the enemy will believe tomorrow, next week, next month. When Sergeant Walsh asks Connolly to photograph him among the arranged sentries for an internal after-action record, the American refuses. There is no argument, no accusation, no speech about morality. Connolly simply says no and steps away. Walsh accepts it without comment. The moment passes quietly, but for Connolly, it marks a line he knows he cannot cross. The patrol extracts without incident and returns to Nui Dat. Connolly submits his report through Military Assistance Command Vietnam channels. The document is classified almost immediately. He adds one request to his formal paperwork. He does not wish to participate in future joint operations with Australian SAS units. No explanation is required. The request is approved. In the months that follow, patterns shift. Enemy movement begins to avoid the long high mountains. Recruitment in nearby villages declines. Desertions increase. Captured documents reference jungle ghosts operating in the area, described in language that mixes fear with superstition. The psychological effect of a single operation ripples outward, achieving results that large-scale conventional actions fail to produce. Inside American command circles, Connolly's report sparks a quiet debate. Some officers argue the Australians have demonstrated a model worth studying. Others insist such methods are incompatible with American doctrine, maybe even with American values. The discussion goes nowhere. The reports are filed, classified, buried under the weight of a war that keeps demanding louder solutions to problems that aren't loud. The war continues unchanged. Eventually, it is lost. Connolly leaves Vietnam carrying something no medal can offset: the knowledge that effectiveness and morality do not always align, that some victories demand a price not everyone is willing to pay. The Australians return to their patrols, unchanged in method, untroubled in appearance, men who crossed a threshold they do not publicly acknowledge. Decades later, historians will still struggle to categorize what happened in the Long High Mountains: tactical brilliance, psychological warfare, moral ambiguity. What remains beyond dispute is this: 5 men altered the behavior of an entire enemy network, not through firepower, but through fear, precision, and patience. The lesson was there to be learned. It simply wasn't. And in that failure to learn, the true legacy of the operation endures, not as a story of victory, but as a warning about the kind of war that cannot be fought without changing the people who fight it.